Hi, this is Dan from MBTI Gifts. Please enjoy this quick commercial that I made.
Can you hold me? Can I hold you? If you love me.
Today we're going to be talking about introverted intuition modes. There's an ancient parable about a group of blind men who discover an elephant for the first time. Though the story exists in many forms, the Hindu fable tells it this way. And so these men of Indostan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right, and all were in the wrong. A lot has been spoken about Jung's concept of introverted intuition, but much of it doesn't tell the complete story. Introverted intuition, or NI as it's referred to in the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, or MBTI, community, is said to be the nigh mystical process of accessing and interacting with the deepest symbols and meanings in the subconscious mind. Introverted intuitives are often ascribed fortune-telling abilities due to their uncanny knack for projecting the future that will likely arrive. Perhaps more simply, NI has been dubbed perspectives. In any case, it's been difficult to find consensus among the MBTI community about exactly how NI works. As I've listened to how NI users describe their own intuitions and compared them to my own, I've realized that there are a number of different ways people use NI, different modes. This document, this presentation, contains charts I've created to describe the modes of NI I've conceptualized in my own mind's eye. And it should be noted that I presume to be an INFJ. There are a number of different symbols that provide meaning to the introverted intuitive. This is an insight consisting of different kinds of impressions. You can see in the top left is the insight, and we are looking in, zooming in on that cluster of information. The mind of an NI user is full of connected meanings that form complex webs of images, symbols, sounds, experiences, memories, and words. And I've also been thinking about it, simulations as well. I don't have that included in this chart, but an entire simulation of a future event or a past event or a present event could live in one of these clusters. If any one of these is triggered in the conscious mind, any of the associated connections can quickly be recalled. This is the same insight, reorganized and simplified. And by the way, you can feel free to pause at any time if you need a little bit more time to digest what you're looking at. Clusters are often in flux and can be endlessly recontextualized, simplified, and restructured. Here are two connected clusters. Clusters also connect to one another. Keep these things in mind as we now journey into the different modes of introverted intuition. The first mode is random inception. An idea comes to the NI user from the well via triangulation. So let's talk about the well first of all. What is the well? Let's imagine a void within our subconscious where new ideas are born. Let's call it the well. The well provides an insight. The well delivers new insights that have been triangulated from existing insights and sensory input. This is an insight joining the other insights. It's allowed to drift among the others and be sorted out later. This is the conscious mind becoming aware of the insight. Though not guaranteed, the conscious mind may become aware of the new insight that's formed. The next mode I want to talk about is sensory inputs turning into meaning. Incoming sensory inputs are triangulated with other meanings to derive new meaning. Here we have a low sensory environment. To start, the NI-DOM is experiencing a low sensory environment. This will allow new triangulations to occur more easily. This image shows sensory input appearing around the well. Suddenly there's a layer of sensory input making it more difficult to triangulate intuitive insights. The sensory input must be processed. The sensory data is triangulated with intuitions to discern the meaning behind it. The data has been processed at this point and filed away for later consideration, no longer causing strain. And this is when all the sensory data has been processed. It's now been synthesized into meaning and the NI user feels relief. Mode 3, problem solving. The NI user has asked their intuition for help and the well responds with an idea. First of all, the conscious mind poses a question to the well and requests a solution. The NI user waits while the subconscious triangulates a truth. An answer has emerged. After an unspecified amount of time, the well suddenly finds a solution. And then the insight is delivered. The insight is delivered to the conscious mind. The NI-DOM is often not able to figure out all of the triangulation that occurred in the moment and would need to think about it after the fact. Then the insight finds a home. The NI-DOM may release the insight back into their subconscious and begin to understand the triangulation that caused the insight to form in the first place. And now it's time to solve the next puzzle. Mode 4, Idea Scrutiny. An idea is examined from as many sides as possible for weaknesses. So this is the idea that will be scrutinized. The NI user will assess the validity of the highlighted insight. Tripping over my words here. Insights in this cluster will be assessed. The NI user will assess the validity of this insight based on the other connected insights. So you could think of the one that's being pointed to as the root insight, and the other three insights must connect to this root insight for this to be valid. The first connection is determined to be valid. The second connection passes as well. Upon final validation, the original insight will be perceived as more valid now that it's been analyzed. However, if the third connection didn't connect, or if any of these insights didn't connect, the connection point would be severed. The unconnected insight would then be removed from the cluster. Mode 5, Transcription. A body of intuitions is transcribed into another format and then condensed in the NI-DOM's mind to relieve strain. First of all, this is the insight that contains information that will be transcribed. Parts of this insight will be transcribed so as to free up space in the NI user's mind. Let's zoom in. The indicated data being pointed to by the arrow is going to be transcribed. The conscious mind examines each of these insight structures to see if any of the data can be transcribed. It looks like the structure at the top could be structured into a matrix or spreadsheet. The structure is sent to the conscious mind for transcription. And then the data is transcribed to a matrix. The conscious mind transcribes the insights into a matrix. The original structure is turned into a reference point to where the matrix resides and the general information inside. Mode 6. Verbalization. The NI Dom attempts to articulate their ideas to another person, as I'm doing right now to you. First of all, the well triangulates an insight based on the constraints. Sorry, I've skipped ahead one slide. Here we are. This is the conscious mind wanting to articulate an insight within some constraints. The conscious mind needs to explain something to another person. First, the subconscious needs to determine the constraints that the answer must fit within. Then the well triangulates an insight based on the constraints. The NI user waits until the subconscious mind factors in all of the constraints and triangulates a truth that takes into account as many factors as possible. After an unspecified amount of time, the well suddenly creates a seed of meaning for the NI user to share. The seed is delivered to the conscious mind. The NI Dom is often not able to figure out all of the triangulation that occurred in the moment and would need to think about it after the fact. The seed is given to the other person. Hopefully, when they open it up, they will correctly understand the insight in the way the NI user understood it. In the case of the INFJ, the constraints of FE will make the seed easier to be understood. And if you're new to FE, that's the generally understood abbreviation for extroverted feeling. Mode 7, NI-TI investigation. The NI user validates their intuitions using TI. There we go. The NI user plans to investigate the indicated insight node. This is the node layer. Inside this node we find more nodes. Zooming in further would result in yet more nodes. The conscious mind wants external validation against intuition. The conscious mind seems intent on better understanding how a certain insight can be true. If true, there should be solid logic and/or evidence to support each connection. So, the data request is given to the conscious mind. The conscious mind is told what kind of data would adequately fill in the gaps to validate the insight in question. Then the conscious mind returns TI and SE data, or introverted thinking and extroverted sensing data. The conscious mind returns with sensory data as well as logic, experimentation, and evidence. The well turns the TI data and SE experiences into meaning and returns it to the conscious mind. Lastly, the conscious mind fills each piece into the appropriate spots. This is the case of insufficient data. If proper data could not be found, or if the data that was found contradicts the insight, it will likely be removed from the cluster immediately, except in cases such as cognitive dissonance. Next, we're going to talk about the very famous NI-TI loop. The NI user teaches themselves with no external stimulus. And I would say there's a slight caveat to that. It's not that there's entirely no stimulus coming in, but more specifically that the stimulus being taken in supports the continuation of the loop. This is a new insight forming, as we've seen before. The well is delivering a new insight. So this should look familiar. The conscious mind becomes aware of the new insight and focuses on it for TI processing. We're in the top layer of an insight now. It's a fully formed network of ideas that may or may not be valid. The conscious mind processes these insights through introverted thinking to find inconsistencies, missing pieces, and patterns. Some insights are moved out of the structure. This demonstrates organized systems. The insights may be further organized into systems to better understand the truth. But there may be missing pieces. The gaps in data imply certain structures. These gaps can be used to inform a line of inquiry in data gathering. This is not to say that these apparent gaps mean that there will be data here, but it seems to imply that there will be. Then questions are sent to the conscious mind. The questions are returned to the conscious mind for processing. Please refer to Mode 3 or Mode 7 to see how each of these questions might be answered. An insight is returning here. The conscious mind returns with an insight that fits the criteria of one of the gaps. The conscious mind feels satisfaction knowing that at least one part of the structure has all of its parts. Another insight continues the never-ending cycle. The loop continues as the NI-TI user has more insights that will need to be organized. It is generally accepted that for INFJs, use of FE, extroverted feeling, is the key to breaking out of an NI-TI loop. Notice that this loop doesn't necessarily rely on feelings to happen. You could be stuck in an NI-TI loop that relates to research you're doing or trying to understand an idea better, but you could get caught in that loop and have difficulty getting out of it. Mode 9, the last mode that we're going to cover in this video, but certainly not the last way that NI can be used. So look for future videos ahead, and please subscribe if you'd like to see future videos that cover more aspects of introverted intuition. So let's look at Mode 9. The NI user constructs a timeline to determine what is likely to unfold, then selects a path. I think you're going to find this part interesting because this explains how NI DOMs can predict the future. And to all the other NI DOMs, I'm sorry for giving away the secret. But if you're an NI Dom and you didn't realize this is how your mind worked, you probably will appreciate knowing this. The NI user is going to construct a timeline, so here we go. First of all, a new forecast insight has been generated. The well has generated a new insight. This insight is a forecast of what will happen. You can see here the start of a timeline. The forecast is simple to begin with. The NI user can perceive the options in front of them, but knows that there are far-reaching consequences. Questions are sent to the subconscious mind. To the conscious mind. The missing pieces are given to the conscious mind as questions to be answered. The conscious mind uses another mode, such as mode 3 or mode 7, to unlock the answers to those questions. The answers and structures are returned. The conscious mind has returned not only with answers to some of the prior questions, but more information regarding the structures of the timeline. This is how the new possibilities in the timeline emerge. The new insights and structures are incorporated into the timeline. At this point, the likeliest outcomes are becoming visible. This is the conscious mind comparing projected outcomes to the desired outcome. The conscious mind now compares the expected timeline to its desired outcome. From here, the conscious mind will select a path. The chosen path could be one of the known outcomes, or those outcomes could be unsatisfactory, in which case the NI user would seek more insight into other outcomes. This is choosing the likeliest path. In this case, the conscious mind has selected the path likeliest to happen with the fewest steps. This selection will now inform the NI user's decisions as they would like to see this path come to pass. This is choosing the easiest path. In this case, the conscious mind has selected a path with even fewer possible steps. The outcome is still unknown, so further insights would need to be gathered. This is choosing the hardest but most desirable path. In this case, the conscious mind has selected the central path. Though there are more unknowns along the path, the final destination is the most desirable. The NI user will seek out new insights to fill in these gaps along the path. This paper has been written with the awareness that there are likely many more NI modes and many other ways to think about NI. My hope is that I've been able to plant some seeds in your mind to not only see NI in a new light, but perhaps form some new ideas that no one has ever thought of before. And I leave you with a quote from Carl Jung himself. He said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." Thanks for watching.